There are moments in life when staying silent isn't about giving up, it's about strategy. Turning 60 doesn't mean losing your voice. It means learning to use it only when it truly matters. Because some battles aren't won by arguing, but by pretending not to notice, even though deep down you understand everything. What no one tells you is that at this age, real power isn't in being right. It's in knowing when to act like you don't know, like it doesn't affect you, like it doesn't matter. And that's not weakness, it's pure wisdom. Because when you play dumb on purpose, you're not losing. You're letting the other person reveal themselves, letting the conflict burn out on its own, and keeping your peace non-negotiable. In this video, I'll show you 7 very specific situations where playing dumb can completely change your experience. It's not about giving in or running away. It's about playing the game with a kind of intelligence most people don't see coming. And here's a heads up. The 7th situation might be the most revealing of all, because it won't just change how you respond. It'll change how you see yourself. I'm Gabriel. Stay with me until the end, because today we're not just talking about respect. Today you're taking back control without ever raising your voice. Have you ever felt like people expect more from you than they give, yet you still carry the guilt of not doing enough? That guilt doesn't come from your failures. It comes from the manipulative words of those who claim to love you. That feeling of being permanently indebted to adult children who already have their own lives, yet insist you remain at their service. This is one of the cruelest traps a mother, an older woman, a person who only wanted to be present, can fall into, used as if she has no right to be tired. This is where the journey begins. The first point in this video is this: play dumb when your children manipulate you with guilt. Yes, that bluntly. Because if you respond to every complaint with justification, every silence with explanations, every disregard with even more giving, the cycle never ends. You become a well that keeps pouring out even when it's already dry inside. It's a problem as common as it is quiet. Adult children who forget, or choose to forget, everything you did for them. And instead of acknowledging your sacrifices, they use your mistakes, because every parent makes them, as currency to charge you with some eternal debt. They throw lines at you like, "You were never there. It's your fault I'm like this. If you really loved me, you'd do this or that." And out of love, you swallow it. You doubt yourself. You try to give even more. But what they don't see, and sometimes you don't either, is that the love you're giving isn't free. It's forced. It's manipulated. Let me tell you something that deeply marked me. Years ago, a 72-year-old woman told me through tears that every time her son spoke to her, she felt like she was on trial. It didn't matter what she said. There was always an accusation disguised as a conversation. "I feel guilty for things I don't even remember doing," she told me. "And no matter how much I try to help him, it's never enough." I asked her if she had ever tried staying silent, not justifying herself, simply nodding without further explanation. She looked at me in surprise and said, "I don't know if that would be fair." And I told her something I also want to tell you today. They're not looking for fairness. They're looking for control. And you are not here to keep paying a debt forever. Play dumb, not because you don't understand what's happening, but precisely because you do. Pretending not to notice the manipulation is sometimes the highest act of wisdom, because by not reacting, by not giving them the performance they're hoping for, you reveal the intent behind their words. You stop feeding the dynamic of emotional blackmail. Instead of defending yourself, you observe. Instead of giving in, you wait. And in that silence, filled with dignity, you begin to reclaim your power. Epictetus said that no one can harm you without your consent. And while emotional pain is harder to control than a physical blow, there comes a moment when you decide whether you'll keep fueling someone else's fire or quietly walk away without burning. Playing dumb is a stoic gesture. You choose not to fight where there's only wear and tear. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you someone who's done begging for love with explanations. But this doesn't end here. There are other situations just as common, where strategic silence and apparent naivety can open the door to a kind of freedom you might have thought was lost. Stay with me, because what's coming next isn't just important, it could completely change how you relate to others and to yourself. What we've just reflected on isn't easy to accept. Recognizing that our own children can hurt us, not out of neglect, but through calculated manipulation, leaves a deep mark. But that mark, if you understand it clearly, can become a wound that no longer bleeds. Because once you learn to play dumb in the face of imposed guilt, you realize you still have a choice in how to live the rest of your days. And that brings us to another painful moment, one that's more common than it seems. We've reached the second key point of this video. When someone speaks to you condescendingly because of your age, play dumb. Not to swallow the contempt, but to silently expose the ignorance hiding behind their false courtesy. What many people fail to understand is that growing older doesn't mean losing value, it means gaining truth. And you don't need to prove your wisdom to anyone. When someone looks down on you for having more years, they're only showing how small their view really is. This problem has deep roots in our culture. We've glorified youth as a symbol of success, speed, and productivity, while aging has been pushed into the shadows. Older people are no longer seen as sources of wisdom, but as burdens or decorative figures. This often shows up as indulgent looks, half-explained comments, unnecessary explanations, as if you no longer have the ability to understand or decide for yourself. Don't worry about that. That's not for you anymore. You should just sit and rest. These phrases may sound polite, but they carry a subtle poison, polite disdain. And when that disdain comes from people who know you, from those who owe you respect, it becomes a quiet form of emotional violence. Stoic philosophy teaches one central truth. The only thing you truly own is your mind, your judgment, your ability to interpret what happens around you. Marcus Aurelius insisted that a person's soul is the one thing no one can touch without their consent. This becomes incredibly powerful in old age. Because when you face condescension, that disguised form of contempt, the worst thing you can do is try to prove your clarity of mind. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to demonstrate anything. Play dumb. Not because you don't understand, but because you understand too much. And that understanding allows you to respond, not from a place of hurt, but from a place of strength. The consequences of this issue are not small. A woman who is treated condescendingly begins, without realizing it, to doubt herself. She starts to speak less, ask less, decide less. She dims her light. She loses her voice not because life took it from her, but because she started to believe she no longer had the right to use it. This affects her self-esteem, her role in the family, her ability to form new relationships, and often her emotional health deteriorates under the weight of that quiet sense of invalidation. She feels displaced, even in her own home, in her own body, in her own time. But the spirituality many of you have cultivated over the years gives you an advantage others don't have. Because when you know your dignity doesn't come from what others say, but from what you hold silently within yourself, you can withstand those looks without collapsing emotionally. You can listen without believing it's true. You can calmly observe as others reveal themselves with their words, while you remain steady, whole, untouched. Play dumb. Because while they think they hold the power, you're remembering that respect isn't demanded. It's commanded by the sheer presence of a woman who has lived, felt, and awakened. This isn't pride. It's identity. And you haven't come this far to let anyone erase it with sweet words laced with poison. What comes next touches on something different, not contempt, but exhaustion. Because often, it's not what people say that drains you most, it's what they make you carry without rest, all in the name of love, habit, or fear. And in those moments too, learning to play dumb might just be your most dignified strategy. When someone speaks to you as if you're worth less because you're older, the wound is clear. It's a lack of respect disguised as false courtesy. But there's another kind of wear and tear that's not always obvious at first because it hides behind duty, routine, and the help you're supposed to give. And that drain comes from carrying what isn't yours. This next step is crucial because without it, you'll stay stuck in the same place, unaware that little by little, you're being emptied out. The third point in this video is this: play dumb when others try to drag you into their drama. Yes, even if it hurts to see others suffer. Yes, even if you feel like it's your role to always be there for everyone. There's an invisible line that often gets crossed, and when it's crossed with you, it's no longer about support, it's about absorption. Absorbing problems that aren't yours, emotional responsibilities you never asked for, tensions others created, and now expect you to solve just because they don't have the maturity to face what they caused. The root of this often lies in how they see you, as the center of balance, the strong one, the one who always holds it together. And you, out of loyalty, out of love, or out of fear of seeming selfish, keep saying yes. But your soul can't carry it all anymore. Your body tells you, your spirit screams it in silence. Even your faith begins to feel clouded. And the worst part is that your giving is never enough. There will always be more to carry, more to fix, more to listen to, until one day you wake up with no desire to speak, no energy left for yourself, no joy for life. That's the price you pay when someone else's drama takes over your home, your mind, your spirit. What can you do? The strategy is simple but powerful. Every time you find yourself in the middle of a conflict that isn't yours, don't step in. Don't ask. Don't get involved. Play dumb. Watch from a distance. Stay quiet. Change the subject. And if they insist, respond with phrases that don't feed the fire. I wouldn't know what to tell you. I hope you find a solution. I don't really have a clear opinion on that. Then steer the conversation elsewhere. This strategy works because it breaks the emotional circuit that feeds the conflict. From a Stoic perspective, not reacting to what you can't control is an act of inner freedom. Epictetus said it clearly: some things are up to us, and some are not. When you recognize that a drama isn't yours to solve, you don't need to step into it. And from a spiritual point of view, protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's reverence for the soul God entrusted to you. You weren't sent to this world to be a dumping ground for other people's anguish, but to live with clarity and purpose. Think of it this way. If your house had a leak, you'd fix it immediately. But if your neighbors had a flood and wanted you to clean it up just because your roof is holding steady, would you step in to fix their mess without humility or respect on their part? It's the same with emotional conflicts. Not every problem needs your involvement. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is nothing and let others learn what they need to learn. In those cases, your silence teaches more than 1,000 words ever could. If what we've covered so far is resonating with you, I invite you to subscribe and hit the like button. That helps me keep creating content that doesn't sugarcoat the truth, but walks beside you with respect and strength. Tell me in the comments what country you're watching from, and if this lesson speaks to you, write, "I don't carry what isn't mine." That way I'll know you're awake, aware, and choosing the battles that no longer belong to you. And don't go anywhere. What's coming next might open your eyes in an entirely new way. There are more important lessons ahead, and the last one might completely transform how you hold on to your calm when everything around you tries to shake it. Exhaustion doesn't always come from what you do. It often comes from everything you carry without ever choosing to. As we've seen, not every conflict deserves your involvement, and not every pain belongs to you. But there's a more subtle kind of drain that seeps in quietly, disguised as love, availability, habit. And by the time you notice it, you don't even have energy left for yourself. The fourth point in this video touches one of the deepest roots of that loss of strength. Play dumb when people expect you to always be available. This is one of the most effective traps society sets, especially for older women. You've been taught that being there for everyone is how you show love, that saying no is selfish, that if you don't respond right away, it must mean you don't care. But what no one tells you is that constant giving also charges a silent toll, forgetting your time, your needs, your right to pause. This mistake is destructive because it doesn't show up as a problem. It looks like a virtue. Being the one who always answers the phone, always gets up to help, cancels her plans because someone needs her. It seems noble, and it is, until it becomes an unspoken obligation. Until your days no longer belong to you because there's an invisible schedule written by other people's demands. That since you're not doing anything line that sounds so harmless is actually a cruel way of dismissing your worth, as if your rest didn't matter, as if your desire to be alone were just a whim. And the worst part is that this expectation of availability never ends. Because when you give everything, the reward isn't gratitude, it's more demands. And so, you become the one who can never get sick, who can't say I can't, who always has to be ready, even if inside you're falling apart. This trap creeps in slowly because it's disguised as love. But love that asks you to disappear so others can thrive isn't love. It's dependence dressed as affection. And every time you put off your own needs to please someone else, you're sending a message to yourself, I don't matter as much. And that message, repeated over the years, weakens your spirit. It clouds your clarity. It strips your freedom. It even takes away your ability to enjoy the moments when you could choose for yourself, but by then, you no longer know how. The consequences of living like this are devastating. Many older women feel like they don't have the right to say, not today. And when they try, they carry a guilt that doesn't belong to them. They feel selfish for taking care of themselves, when in truth, they're reclaiming what was always theirs, their time, their autonomy, their dignity. In Stoic philosophy, inner freedom begins by recognizing what you can control. And one of those things, even if it feels difficult, is your availability. You decide who, when, and how you give your energy. It's not about abandoning the people you love. It's about remembering that you, too, need space to breathe, to regroup, to not lose yourself. Playing dumb in this context isn't about being cold. It's about being wise. It's pretending you didn't hear that new demand, so you can give yourself one more day of peace. It's not replying right away, not because you don't care, but because you're choosing to put yourself first. It's breaking the pattern that taught you. Being constantly available is what makes you worthy. Your worth isn't in what you do for others, it's in what you recognize you deserve for yourself. Because when you learn to say, not now, when you give yourself permission to rest without explaining why, something starts to heal inside. You begin to recover that voice that went quiet from years of silencing your own desires. And then, life stops feeling like an endless to-do list and becomes something possible again, a place where you fit too. And that, believe me, isn't selfish. It's a profound act of respect for the life you still have ahead of you. The previous point forces us to face something we often avoid, that constant obligation to always be available as if our existence only made sense in service to others. But there's something even more delicate, and it's when that availability becomes a refuge we no longer want to let go of, even when we know it's not doing us any good. We've reached the fifth point in this video. And now it's time to talk about what happens when you no longer have the courage to face a relationship that stopped being genuine. Play dumb when you realize a friendship is no longer sincere. And yes, this one hurts more, because we're not talking about strangers or social obligations you can dodge with an excuse. We're talking about people you've let into your world, your history, your heart. Friendships built over years, filled with shared memories, with love that once felt solid, but isn't anymore. Because even if the past is still present, the connection has quietly worn thin, and you feel it. In those distant glances, the short replies, the unexplained absences, but you don't say anything. You stay, hoping the connection will come back even though it's gone. And slowly, that begins to chip away at your dignity. The mistake here is thinking that every meaningful relationship must be preserved forever. But life doesn't work that way. People change. You change. And some relationships stop giving, even if they once felt essential. The problem is when you cling to them out of habit, fear of being alone, or a misguided loyalty that tells you letting go is betrayal. And so you stay stuck in relationships where there's no real presence anymore, only obligation, fatigue, or even manipulation disguised as closeness. Friendships that only reach out to share their troubles, but never to hear yours. People who remember your number when they need something, but not when they have something to celebrate. Bonds where there's no balance left, just emotional routine. Holding on to these relationships doesn't just drain your energy. It reinforces the idea that you have to accept anything to avoid loneliness. And that mindset is dangerous. It makes you believe any company is better than silence, when the truth is, silence, when lived well, is far healthier than a presence that slowly wears you down. It robs you of space. It keeps you from opening the door to new people, deeper conversations, relationships where you don't have to wonder whether you're valued for who you are or for what you provide. And that loss of respect, because yes, you're disrespecting yourself by keeping relationships that no longer see you, turns into a constant feeling of dissatisfaction. You're surrounded, but you feel alone. And over time, that makes you more fragile, more dependent, more invisible. Now, turning this around doesn't mean causing drama or cutting people off abruptly. It's not about confrontation. It's about creating inner distance. Observing from afar without bitterness. Telling yourself, this relationship no longer nourishes me and I deserve peace. And then acting accordingly. Maybe that means calling less. Maybe it means speaking less, expecting less, trusting less. But doing it without resentment, with the quiet certainty that you're protecting your emotional health. Because when you accept that some people were only meant to walk with you for part of the journey, not all the way to the end, you take your power back. You free yourself. You make room. The mindset required here is simple but difficult. Stop looking at the past as a promise. What was, was. What matters now is how you feel in that relationship. Is there joy, respect, reciprocity? If not, then the most stoic thing you can do is stay silent, step back, and protect your energy. Because you weren't born to carry dead connections, you were born to live surrounded by truth, even if that means being with only a few. Don't beg for affection. Don't hold on to relationships out of pity or nostalgia. If a friendship is no longer sincere, you have the right and the responsibility to walk away quietly. Because that kind of silence, when chosen with intention, is a profound form of self-respect. And at this stage in your life, you deserve nothing less. When you recognize that a friendship is no longer sincere and choose to step back, something in you begins to clear, like dusting off a room that's been closed for years. But that first step, powerful as it is, isn't enough. Because there are still so many everyday situations where your peace is under constant attack, where a single comment, look, or tone can become bait meant to make you react. And if you don't understand the game, you fall into it. The sixth point in this video touches on one of those moments we all face, especially when we feel like we no longer have much to lose. Play dumb when someone argues just to be right, not to find the truth. Because there's no real conversation there, only a trap. A provocation disguised as dialogue. A fight that's already been written, waiting for you to say anything, just one thing, to justify the conflict. Picture this. You're in your kitchen, making something simple for yourself. Someone walks in, doesn't say hello, throws a sharp comment, a veiled criticism, something subtle but wounding. You hear it, you understand it, you know exactly where it's coming from, but you don't respond. You take a breath, you turn around, you change the subject, and in your silence, that person is left alone with their own poison. Because at this point in your life, you already know that stepping into that game means losing. It means draining yourself. It means handing your peace to someone who can't even manage their own. Now imagine the opposite. You respond, you get upset, you defend yourself. It hurts that they don't understand you, and in minutes, your whole day becomes a battlefield. Your energy's gone, your calm disappears. And there was no justice, just another argument that solved nothing. This happens because many people argue not to clarify, but to control. They don't want to understand you, they just want to win. And if you engage, if you answer, they drag you in. You end up saying things you didn't mean, carrying emotions that aren't yours, feeling guilty for losing control. And over the years, that builds up. The frustration of not staying quiet in time. The guilt of being the one who raised her voice. The sadness of knowing that even when you spoke the truth, no one really listened. All of it becomes another layer of emotional exhaustion. And that's where many older women get lost, between what they know is true and what they can't stop fighting to prove. But is it really worth it? Do you really need to convince someone who's already decided not to understand you? Epictetus said that it's not what happens to us that harms us, but our opinion about it. And sometimes, the best opinion is none at all. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is play dumb, let it go, say nothing, not because you're weak, but because you're no longer willing to lose your peace over arguments that lead nowhere. Because you've learned that truth doesn't need to be shouted, it just needs to be held. And when you hold it, you don't need to defend it anymore. But if you don't make that shift, if you keep entering every provocation, every attack masked as a conversation, life will pass you by in that fight, in defending, explaining, resisting. And while you argue, the day slips away, your spirit wears down, your dignity thins out. That's why this point is so important. Not every conversation deserves a response. Not every attack deserves a defense. There's tremendous power in playing dumb with grace, in saying with your silence, I won't be part of this. Because your energy is worth more. And by now, you know it. If you've made it this far, you already know. Most arguments aren't about solutions. They're traps designed to make you justify yourself, lose control, or say something they can throw back at you later. That's why firm silence, the choice not to respond, not to engage, to play dumb with full awareness, is an act of dignity. But there's one scene that's even more delicate, more intimate, more dangerous. Because this time, it's not someone else attacking you, it's you. We've reached the 7th point in this video, and this is the most important moment. Play dumb when someone tries to provoke you into losing your calm. And sometimes, the one provoking you is you. That inner voice saying, I'm so done. This isn't fair. Here we go again. That spark that lights the fuse of anger, of resentment, of impulse. It's not always others. Sometimes, it's your own exhaustion turning against you. And in that brief moment, where you could take a breath, you choose instead to let out a sharp word, a complaint, an outburst that leaves you drained and empty afterward. Has it happened to you? Have you caught yourself saying something you later regretted just because you couldn't hold the pain in silence? That's the hardest provocation to face, the one that comes from within. Real transformation doesn't begin when others change. It begins when you decide not to react the way you always have. And that takes strength. It takes emotional maturity. It takes understanding that many times you were provoked because they knew you'd react. Because they knew you'd raise your voice, cry, get defensive. And that's how they took control. Because real control doesn't belong to the loudest voice, it belongs to the one who can stay steady without exploding. Playing dumb, in this context, means looking conflict in the eye and choosing not to step in. It means feeling your blood boil and not letting it spill over. It means hearing a provocation and responding with a pause. Because that pause is your boundary, your sacred ground, your declaration that you weren't born to react to everything, but to choose what truly deserves your energy. Look at yourself honestly for a moment. Think about the days you lost your calm. What came of it? What did anger fix? What did rage build? Nothing. Just exhaustion. Just guilt. Just heavy silence. Now think, how many times could you have chosen silence with strength, distance with clarity, a wise redirection? I don't say this to make you feel guilty, but to help you see it clearly. Because transformation doesn't come from denial. It comes when you take ownership. When you say, yes, sometimes I've reacted poorly, but I don't want to live like that anymore. That quiet decision can change everything. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to prove you're right. You don't need to win every argument. What you need is to protect your peace as if it were the most sacred thing you have, because it is. And at this stage of life, if you don't protect it, no one else will. So the next time someone, or even you, tries to push you to the edge, remember this: you can play dumb and choose silence, not out of weakness, but out of strength. Because the one who can stay calm holds the real power. And that power today is in your hands. What you heard today isn't a message of comfort or a package of quick fixes. It's an uncomfortable invitation to look at your life with the clarity that only age can give you. Reaching 60, 70, or even beyond is not the end of the road. It's the moment you decide whether you'll keep living as a spectator of other people's decisions or finally take back control of your own days. Because playing dumb in certain situations isn't giving up or disconnecting from reality. It's choosing where your energy is worth spending and where it's not. It's saying no to emotional drain without losing awareness. It's a mature, stoic, and deeply respectful way to protect your peace when the world keeps trying to take it from you. If you've made it this far, let me acknowledge it with real honesty. Not everyone stays until the end of a reflection like this. Many prefer what's easy, soft, and non-confrontational. Not you. You chose to stay, to listen, to question, and that says a lot about who you are. That's why I want to ask you something simple and clear. Drop a comment with your country and the phrase, "My peace is my power." That way, I'll know you're on the other side, awake, ready to live with more strength and less guilt, more clarity and less wear. And if something in today's message struck a chord, if you saw yourself in any of these moments, I invite you to subscribe, not to be another number, but to be part of a community that doesn't aim to entertain, but to awaken. That's what the Stoic Garden is here for, to give you a voice that doesn't pity you, that doesn't just say what you want to hear, but what you need to hear in order to live with purpose. I'm Gabriel, and my goal here isn't to convince you of anything. It's to remind you that it's not too late, that every decision you make, no matter how small, can be a statement of your worth. And if you know someone who needs to hear these words, someone feeling drained, confused, or stuck in a routine that's robbed them of peace, Share this, not to change their life for them, but so that if they choose to, they'll know they're not alone. Stay right here in this space. At the end of this video, you'll see two more. One of them might be the next step in a conversation we've only just begun. Because your story isn't over yet. And here, in this garden, every day can be the start of something clearer, stronger, and more your own.